So we will be checking now. Hello. We will check right now how the audio works. I can see that somebody is there. So please let me know how you can hear me, if you can hear me. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me now? We can hear you. Okay, great. Oh, good. Well, thank you so much to my wonderful team that just saved the day. I have no idea what was wrong. We have no idea. We just had to restart the whole session and okay, wonderful. So hopefully the other people will find us again. Okay, so before I see any questions from you, and Dene is here, wonderful. I will then address the question that came in the mail. It was a question about practicing with metronome versus without metronome. Okay, so what we know by now from the brain research is that when we have metronome on and we listen to it and we adjust to the metronome, we play perfectly in time, in good time and tempo, whichever it might be. Once we turn the metronome off, absolutely different parts of the brain start working in order to produce the same rhythm tempo for us. So in a way, you have to practice with metronome, without metronome, with metronome, without metronome, constantly switching off and on so that different portions of the brain that work either with metronome or without metronome are engaged. So the best way to do it actually these days, because most of us, of course, have smartphones and we can access a lot of wonderful apps. So there are apps that allow you to program the metronome, not on every beat, first on every beat, then to skip some beats, one beat, or to skip two beats, and later to skip random beats. And basically metronome will be going all the time. You will be playing at the same time and metronome will catch you again exactly in the right time. You can see how much you got off or maybe not, hopefully not. So, but this seems to be the surest way these days with the help of technology to train a good pace with the metronome or without metronome, okay? So then, of course, how did we do this in the old days, so to speak, when we didn't have any of these apps? It's you then train an ability to play with metronome, but keep your own tempo, like hear it, but don't adjust to it. And then you start hearing how much ahead of you of the metronome you get, or how much behind. And then you stop, then you adjust, then you start again. So that's the technique I used in my growing up years. But these days, as I say, there are very good apps. So why not to take advantage of technological development? Okay, hello everybody. So please supply me with questions. If you don't supply me with questions, as I said before, I do not have a topic prepared. I don't give a lecture during the streams like this. I'm waiting for your questions. So give me anything to talk about or to explain, and I will do that. So go ahead. Well, since nobody is coming up, all right, let me continue then for training the different ways of evenness in your left hand. Oh, wait a second, a question came in. What are the ideal contact points for each string? Well, here we need to make sure that we understand the thing about contact points. Each contact point may be ideal for the dynamic that you're playing in. Okay, so in this case, I will call dynamic as volume even, but of course we know that dynamics are really the characters. So nevertheless, let's go with a regular sort of definition of dynamic, that this has to do with volume. So If you are talking about like mid sound, which we most of the time practice, which is mezzo forte pretty much, then we can talk about the ideal contact point for mezzo forte on each string, yes. But if we talk about piano or fortissimo as ideal contact point for those, dynamics will be different as well on each string. So, okay, so if we're in a mezzo forte, that will be number 3, definitely number 3 on A string. On E string, it will be, I would say, still number 3, 3 and 3. And on D, it will be probably 3.1 maybe, because at 3, you will have to already play quite forte on D string. So to get the good sound here, that would be a bit louder than mezzo forte here. The same contact point produces a good mezzo forte sound. On D, in order to get the same sound, you will go to probably 3 point, as I said, 3 or maybe even 3.5. And on G, it will be closer to 4. The contact point will be 4. To produce the same sound of mezzo forte, the same tempo, the same pressure on the bow, and so on. Okay? So that would be ideal contact point for mezzo forte on each string. Okay. Next question. My bow is not steady on the strings, maybe because my hands are a bit shaky. My teacher assigns me exercises and they've helped, but still a bit shakiness. Now, the shakiness part of it's important what kind of shaky it is. Could you please be a little bit more specific? In other words, do you have this problem, like you go and that happens, that kind of shakiness, or is it your bow shakes more when you're at the frog? That can be completely different reason for it. Okay. Okay. L says that kind of shakiness. All right. So this usually is like I did it right now to show you what I did. It's I was, first of all, I was grabbing the stick a little bit too firmly for my own uh, good, so to speak. And I went with a lot of kind of jerky movement at the first, and that's what caused this bow kind of jump. So it's basically, if I do it a lot, I will get the, I mean, almost can get off the string to ricochet. Okay, so any sudden movement of the hand and sudden movement of the hand and a little bit too much pressure with the wrong fingers, not first one in the correct way, but sort of like grabbing into the stick, will produce this kind of shakiness. So what you need to do is to see that the bow moves, you move the bow very nicely, in sort of in elastic way, here. As you can see, my fingers are sort of breathing on the bow. I mean, what moves really is my forearm, and then wrist yields, and my fingers are kind of breathing. I allow it. It's a reciprocal movement. I don't do anything with the fingers, but it's a reciprocal movement to this, you see. So now fingers are actually moving slightly if you see them against the bow. So that would be the way to achieve very smooth changes, and the smooth changes, and the bow will not be jumping if you're at the middle of the bow. But basically, yes, it's a jerky movement, it's sudden movement, and there is usually grabbing into the stick like this, rather than what people would want to say, like using weight or feeling of weight on the stick into the string. Okay, let me see. Next questions. From Christopher. I am an advanced player, but I'm struggling with keeping my bow straight when drawing the bow. Do you have any recommendations on how I can keep my bow straight? I feel I am losing tone. Yes, you absolutely will be losing tone, especially if the bow goes, if it goes here. Yes, that's where you will be losing tone for sure. I mean, just getting softer. Exercises. Honestly, I don't have specific like exercise exactly. My own ways of a way of dealing with this problem, because all of us have this problem at some point. We deal with this. I've practiced a lot with mirror, which you probably have done, I hope, and not do more. And the thing is here. So well, like right now I can look at myself sort of like a mirror. It will be the monitor, right? So if I'm looking here, I will make sure that, have you seen my video? I hope you'd have, how to keep the bow straight, the 3 or 4 part arm movement, as I call it there. I realized I'm black on black, so let me remove this so you can see actually my arm a little bit better. So okay, so as I would move here from the frog, right? So from the frog, you will see this part moving first, then both of them will be opening. And then eventually when I go here, this will be coming in, this will be keep opening. And then both will be going, and then just the upper arm is going. So it's really kind of 4-part movement of the arm. That's primarily what keeps the bow straight. So understanding this, doing, sometimes what really helps is just to get this kind of scheme into your mind, and doing like this, what we did when we were little. We were just trained that way. So it's 1, 2, 3, and really going against the imaginary line here. You draw an imaginary line in the air where your bow is usually when you play. So that kind of line right here, right? So you do it without violin, the line is there. And so with this movement, so you do 1, then 2, you open both slightly, and then 3, you keep opening this one, and this one starts coming. Upper arm comes forward. 4, 4, then 4, 3, 2, 1. So when we were little, as I said in my video, we did just really 3 of them, like 1, 2, 3. Kind of very schematic. 4 is a little bit more with the transitions, when both parts, the upper arm and the forearm, are moving at the same time and in the bit different ratios. But that really helps because you just really need to have a good map in your brain. And then with the bow, you just follow this. I had to watch my bow both in the mirror or here on the screen and here also on the violin. So I would memorize how, when it's really good, I would stop sometimes, like this, and look. Okay, so that's very straight. So then how does it look here? So I can check that way. And I realize that, the way it looks with your slanted eyes is not exactly parallel, but you get used to it. And now it looks parallel to me. Okay, so you go to the tip the same way. So you come here. Oh, okay, so that then is good. So then you play for a while, you don't watch the mirror, and then you just stop at random, and then you look. Oh, I'm slightly, you see right now, it's slightly not parallel, actually, a lot not parallel. But so I will catch that. Oh, okay, so I will have to do this. Oh, I see. So, and then you memorize, your body memorizes. So for some people it's a very long process. And especially if you are, I don't know if you are a left-hander by any chance. For left-handers, it's harder. For right-handers, it's usually simpler, but not by much. It's a hard thing for most people. So good luck. Maria, for reaching back to a low first finger, do you ever slide the base of the first finger knuckle back along the neck, or do you just reach by bending your knuckle back? Very good question. I believe it does slide slightly. Yeah, this is a question about the left hand. It does slide. Let me see if you can see it. No, you can't really see it. Yeah, so to bend back, it's this movement. So yes, it goes from the base knuckle slightly. It's a very slight adjustment though. So it's not that one. That will be bending, that will be sliding back slightly. That is a question. That was a question about arranging your left hand especially when we move thumb forward from where I call the dungeons, when it sits here and we don't want it here. So we restructure, but with that comes a lot of adjustments in the hand, and that's the question. Okay. Else, what is he? Where is it? Alston. Do you have any tips for wrist vibrato? Whenever I do wrist vibrato, my wrist starts to protrude and point toward the scroll. Vibrato is consistent, smooth, however. Okay, so Alston, I don't know if you have seen my very famous video on wrist vibrato. That is really the whole structured method, I guess. Again, method is not mine. Method has been invented a long time before me, but I do believe in this method because it worked not only for me but for so many people that I have taught. But this is a specific question. So, in other words, correct me if I'm wrong. So, when you vibrate, does it look like this then, Elston? You will have to write down. Is that what happens when you vibrate? Your wrist protrudes this way. So, I guess I will see if you will respond to that. But nevertheless, I would assume that that's probably what you mean, protruding towards the scroll. That is probably what happens. Now, this, I'm doing it at will, obviously. I will not vibrate like that. I vibrate here. So this or that, it's, in my opinion, is a completely a habit. It's how you probably learned wrist vibrato at first, and you learned it with unwanted position of this. It doesn't need to be there whatsoever. So if you can do it like that, you can just put it in and say, okay, do the same thing, and it will do it. Because basically the wrist vibrato is, as I say in my video on wrist vibrato, it comes basically from the knocking movement. If you translate the movement into like physiological movement that we use in daily life, which I like doing, I like translate almost any movement that we can find on violin, or every movement that we can find on violin. I've tried to translate into something comprehensible to non-violinists, to just a regular person. Can they do this movement in maybe a little bit different form, right? Just physiology of the body is very important. Okay, so the closest movement to this vibrato in real life will be like knocking, like this. And so when we do knocking, we probably unlikely to do it like this. It's not very comfortable actually to get your wrist bent up and then knock. We will do it with from the straight wrist, neutral wrist. So the same thing will be then when we vibrate there. However, we also have habits. So if somebody started practicing wrist vibrato at some point when being younger in this way, who knows? Because not who knows, but that's how it got stuck. It also could be that when people are practicing in upper positions vibrato, then the hand is in that position. That has to be in this position because we have to avoid go around the violin, so to speak, right? And that becomes this way. So when we go down, we do not need to preserve this. We can get into our favorite neutral position, because neutral position is physiologically the most beneficial position to work from. That's what we do anytime we don't think, we will go to neutral position because it's more comfortable. So yes, but a lot of things are just habit. So I would suggest watch your habit and just don't do it. It's unnecessary. Do you have any tips on making this stroke even and fluent? You mean this stroke? Which stroke? Détaché? That's Joseph. Joseph, if you could please. I'm looking. Maybe it was clarified somewhere, but that would be great if you make it clear, clarify a bit. So let me see. The mirror is easy, says Christopher. That would be my question. Is easy, but yeah, away from the mirror. My professor called me out constantly. Yes, well, that is back to the question of practicing for the straight bow. Yes, for that reason, many people have to be looking at the bow for a long time, and then of course also looking away and learning it this way. But there are some people who are lucky enough to not watch the bow with the eyes, not turn the head and just kind of play like this, and everything works perfectly fine for them from the beginning very easily. I would say that they're minority of those people, but majority would be will have to first watch the bow really well. Okay, I have a question from Sound Engraver. Oh, thank you so much. I mean, you thank me for the channel and recommendations to your student. I found I can teach vibrato that effectively. I have, even with the help of my video, you mean, or just in general? Vibrato is very hard to teach. I must say, it's really hard to teach. So I always approach vibrato um, through the wrist vibrato first and foremost, because wrist vibrato is just the most versatile type of vibrato. But to say that we only use wrist, of course, we use other types of, like arm. Arm is always present. Arm vibrato, the forearm vibrato. I mean, nobody does the upper arm vibrato. It's not possible. But when we say arm vibrato, we mean forearm vibrato, and it's there anyway in the wrist as well. Um, yes. So if for some people, perhaps if the wrist is just not coming at all, then maybe you need to go the other route and do the arm vibrato. And there are many videos on arm vibrato, and most of them are pretty much the same. Arm vibrato is like a default vibrato for most people, and it's not bad exactly if it is not the only type that a person is using. But if it's the only type, then yes, then it might be later, it might be a problematic one. But it's easier to learn in a way. When you do arm vibrato, you put the hand like the arm like that, and you just start moving the arm in that way. But as I said, I haven't done videos on that, and yeah, I would recommend just to watch some other arm vibrato videos. And yet, I still recommend to do wrist, of course, if possible at all. Okay, so let me see. Next question. Um, question. So Joseph, in Mozart 4, there is a spiccato passage with a lot of string crossings on the lower 3 strings. Do you have any tips on making it more even fluent? Okay. Okay, so if the bow jumps too high when you cross strings, well, number one, anytime the bow jumps too high, you have to be able to play it in tempo on the string. Have you tried that? So whatever I right now will not be guessing exactly where it is, but if you have any string crossing and it's in spiccato, first you check it on detached. So for instance, okay, well, my example obviously is very simple. So then after that, you do détaché and you do it lightly, slightly and lightly, allowing the bow to come off. Rather than going to off as a different stroke, go from détaché. Okay, so. You see what I mean? It's very, very close to the string then. And that in that case, it's not going to be jumping too much. Okay, so I hope that is understandable and helps. Okay, let me see. Next question, back to my top of the line. Will you ever make a video on rapid up bow staccato? It's a good question. I probably will. I will entice one of my students to be my guinea pig and demonstrate different types of staccato. Yeah. I mean, you mean rapid bow, the tight arm staccato? They're usually the fastest staccato is a tight arm staccato. But here's the thing about the tight arm staccato. It's faster when you're young, and it's getting slower when you're older. So if that's what you meant, yes, I will. I'll try my best to do it. Okay, let's go next. Hello, how many days should I spend on an etude? I started to take Wolfart from etude 30 to 60 one by one because my teacher makes me spend forever on Kreutzer 2 only. Kreutzer 2 is also my favorite thing. Yeah, one of those. And some of my students play Kreutzer 2 forever, not because it's an etude though already. It's like an exercise. Okay, so that's when the Kreutzer 2 can come in handy. It depends. It depends on what your goals are really. So I hope that your teacher also does it for an exercisey reason and not just like an etude. But anyway, I'm not there, so I can't tell you exactly how many days you should spend on an etude. Depends on what condition you would like this etude to be when you part with that. Okay, that would be number one. Number two, how long it takes you to learn to that condition. For instance, if you want this etude to be memorized, which is what we had to do all the time, we had to have it memorized, and we had to be close to tempo. If it's very fast tempo, okay, we were allowed to be maybe a little less fast, but still fast enough. So if that's the case, and then you see how many days it takes you to get it to that condition. If memorization is a problem, and or memorization is not necessary, then you probably would be moving a bit faster. But still, you need to learn the etude, right? In order for any etude to be useful, you need to learn the basic techniques that this etude is giving you, what it is for. Usually, there are 2 to 3 to 4 techniques in one etude. So you make sure, like on string crossings, quality of détaché, intonation. Maybe that's one. The other will be completely a shift, and string crossings in slurs. Okay, could be that. Also, intonation will be everywhere. So intonation is a part of any etude. So you just have to see how long it takes you. But ideally speaking, I would say probably a week per etude would be good. Yeah, up for easier etudes a week. Harder etudes usually 2 weeks to 2 to 3 weeks. Alejandro is asking, hi, I would like to ask you what exercise you recommend for the study of the Satie Spiccato, specifically for the orchestral passages of Mozart 39 and Schumann Symphony number 2, Scherzo, right? Honestly, when you get to difficult things like that Mozart and Schumann, their exercises will be made of these excerpts, okay? So it is assumed that by then you already have good spiccato or good sautille, because you can't learn the sautille and spiccato on these very difficult excerpts. It's just not, it's out of sync. You have to learn it on easier things. So the etudes and exercises for specifically spiccato, let me think. I mean, I don't have any book right now of mine here. I know that there are good ones of Berio from the School of Violin Playing that are specifically for different types. Well, I mean, I'm thinking ricochet actually. No, let me see. Well, there basically spiccato exercises will be starting from really early books. You can take Wolfart books, and then of course would be in Kreutzer. You can take Fiorillo, any of these books, and sometimes you just go for a détaché. Something is a détaché etude, and you put it in spiccato. So that would be a good thing if your spiccato already happens and your sautille happens. Before this, like pre-exercises, is to play them on different types of scale and arpeggios especially. So hard part about the spiccato and sautille are usually after you get the stroke. If we're talking about you already have the stroke and then you're dealing with string crossings, yeah, then you have to do things like, okay, sorry. So for instance, you will have A major arpeggio, and you limit your left hand at that point to one position, and you can do 2 notes per 2 strokes per note, to both three strokes per note, yes. So that way it's uneven, and it basically checks how good your sautille is. In this case, it will be sautille. I call it sautille. It's a fast spiccato. It could be called fast spiccato. So in those excerpts that you're saying, listing here, Mozart 39, I would say they're both fast spiccatos. Schumann is a bit slower, but it's still spiccato. It's not a sautille really. It's more controlled. Sautille is a bit less controlled, but still you have to control, of course, how you go from string to string. Now, if your question really is about those specific pieces already, you have sautille, you have spiccato, your bow knows how to jump, and you feel comfortable with this in general, then on those, on open string, you take half a bar. Sometimes you can take the whole bar, but a lot of times it depends on what you are in your 4/4 and you're in 16 notes. Then you will take 8 notes. Maybe on the 9th you will stop. Okay, so you will give you play the 9 notes with music, looking and paying attention on which string you are. Then you can do like shadow bowing. For instance, if I'm doing random notes I'm playing right now, and I will go da, 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 da. Okay, so for the open strings will be that could be the tune, so to speak, for the open strings of the same notes. And then I would play just open strings and feel where my elbow has to be when exactly I go to the next string. But this is an easy example. Examples from 39 and symphony and the second symphony, their scherzo are very hard. So you break that in small sections like that, and you learn them by being an open string, not looking at the music, completely go by the tune of the open string and speed that tune up in 8 notes to very fast tempo, to the tempo that you need. Okay. So after that, when you're ready, like you got it, then you check it with the left hand. But make sure that you don't just go like, oh, and play again with music and everything. You're just like, oh, now I play it there. No, you put your left hand into your right hand. That's very important. And if you do it like this, you will see a huge difference in comfort. And then you do next part of the bar and the next part of the bar and so on. So that's the best way to do it. Well, thank you very much for your compliments. I came across many violinists that are saying bow with hair flat and the string sounds better. I don't hear any difference. The only way I made with you can keep hair attention less with flat. Um, you know, there are two schools of thought on that subject. Um, there's a school that says play everything with flat hair, and there is Franco-Belgian school, which that's where I was taught in that line of thinking that we are playing with some tilt of the bow. It's important not to over tilt the bow. Okay, so even if I play with the tilt of the bow some, so my bow is never really flat like this. So if it's flat, you will see it that way. So you don't see the hair right now. Basically, here you just see the stick. So that's flat hair. That's classic flat hair. So I play with the hair tilted like this. Okay, so some people who tilt, they start over tilting. That's not very good. So a little bit of tilt is something that what we do in my school kind of thing. So what are the benefits of each are quite simple. So when you are tilting the bow a little bit, you're not playing with a whole hair, um, full hair, right? So the bow tends to jump less because the bow, as I was showing before, tends to jump sometimes, and especially when you have very vigorous movement, kind of jerky movement maybe. And sometimes we need a jerk in a way, we need an accent or something, right? So the bow here will jump more like this. If I do the same thing with the tilted bow, it doesn't jump or jumps much less if the bow is very jumpy. Mine is not a very jumpy bow, but some bows are more jumpy, just like the stick does it easier. So the bow, if you play with flat hair and you get that kind of jump and you don't want that jump, so what do? You need to press more. So you will get also louder sound, but it also will be sort of a little bit choky sound, which is, again, a lot of times people who do play with flat hair, sometimes they get that kind of little choky sound. Yes, it's loud, it's very projecting. Is it better? If it's not choking, it could be louder. I wouldn't say it's better. Not like everything that is louder is better. But sometimes it definitely fits. And sometimes I would play with flat hair, of course. However, with the tilt, so you get more refined tone and still quite loud. If you can compare the decibels, between the flat hair and the tilted hair, probably will be a little bit more in the on the side of flat hair. But still, you can get a lot of projection. So it's a personal preference at this point. But generally, we know that if you use tilt, the sound you can do more with inflections in the sound and nuance. When you play with flat hair, you will have less of that and just more straightforward projection. So choose what you want. Let me see. Regards from Brazil, says Marcos. In our church, we have a lot of violins, but no violas. What did you recommend to increase the interest on viola playing? Well, I would say that it's very versatile. He or she who also plays viola will be more in demand, obviously, because this person will be in demand where violinists are necessary or needed, and where violists are needed. Viola is a beautiful instrument, and also sometimes people who, just size of the person may matter. Somebody with very big hands or just like kind of massive approach to the bow sound. Maybe you're choking the violin a little bit in the right hand, and if they take viola, it will sound gorgeous. It's just sometimes that way. So perhaps looking at different people and seeing which ones may be a dormant, very good violist would be a good idea. But I would sell the point, basically. That's what I say to my students. Versatility. It's very important. So yeah. In the old days, every violinist played viola. Absolutely. Like the better violinists, the more they play viola too. So they're like sister family we are. Okay. The issue with your wrist, Alston, back to you, and it's about vibrato. Also, do I have exercises for making the vibrato more consistent? Currently, it is broad and fast, but the highs and lows may vary with each wrist movement. Broad and fast. So basically, it's like, whoa, a lot of it, right? um, well, the exercise that I do, I mean, I refer people to, since you and I are not acquainted and you have access to my videos, I would refer you to my wrist vibrato video. So you will go, I mean, if you have that wrist vibrato itself, right? So you don't need the first stages uh, when it moves on the string and so on. I mean, you already have it. But with metronome, that's where it really makes it much more even and much more controlled. So you don't allow, in other words, I don't have a metronome here right now, but we imagine that it's clicking. So if I have vibrato, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, and so my vibrato goes da 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 like this. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. Okay, so it's kind of slowish vibrato. Oh, so hello. Okay, so here back to vibrato question. You see, I'm pulsing right now a little bit, like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. So what I would do here, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. I'm resting, but the bow is moving. So that's a very necessary part. So you cannot allow your hand to do something like, that little at the end. You just don't allow it. If necessary, you slow down the speed of vibrato. So you go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so forth, right? So you slow it down, but you make it obey your will, the will of the brain. Then you gradually increase the tempo of the beats. And at this point, if you have vibrato, you're already in triplets. It's the best way to think about vibrato is in triplets. That wow, 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 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, depending on what your tempo is. Keeping vibrato close. Obviously, if it's too wide, you don't want it to be too wide, especially higher positions. So yeah, just work with metronome. I would say that's the best way because you need it for duration. Don't increase the duration though too soon. Always have that break because you need to kind of realize what you're doing, what your hand is doing, and adjust to it. That's what you have the two beats when you're not vibrating and you're assessing, preparing, next, assessing, preparing, so on. Okay. You're welcome, Alejandro. Frenchman, my issue with vibrato is that do wrist vibrato only with almost fixed joints. Any specifics of the work compared to first joint vibrato flexibility? Well, okay, fixed joints are not good. Fixed joints are, as I say in that the same vibrato video, the fixed joints are there either because we have arthritis, usually we don't, or because we press too hard. We just press too hard, and it's a just it's a plague for all the violinists, and we just like tend to do this and press, especially first finger. Yes, first finger tends to press a lot, and then you cannot do anything with it. So if I'm trying to do vibrato here, I can try my best. I mean, I can't even do wrist at this point. It would probably more arm, and it still won't be moving. And I did have that problem when I was little. I remember that. So the easiest way to fix it is actually very simple. You just press much less. So if you imagine that when you press normally, that's whatever you do regularly, that's your normal pressure, right? So try to go to, not try, just actually go to harmonic level. Harmonic level means we don't press at all. So if I'm on a re or a D in here, right? So that's when I press. And when I don't press, it will be this sound, harmonic sound. Okay, so if I go with vibrato on harmonic sound, I mean, it will kind of wobbly around that harmonic. It cannot do anything, but it will be actually, and the fingertip is relaxed enough. Well, it will be relaxed because you're not pressing. So again, I can refer you to my wrist vibrato video because there I show it in the section that says glue the tip to the string, as if you glue the tip to the string, of course. Okay, so that's the case when you imagine that you're stuck on the string, but only stuck, only skin level. And then you move, and it just whatever movement, you can just do whatever, without a metronome, without playing, just see what happens. Everything will be loose. If you cannot have that sensation on the violin, you can do it without violin, just holding it like this, and then just a little bit hold, and you can feel how everything will be kind of wobbly in here because you're just completely loose. Okay, that's number one. Number two, you can take violin, not in the violin position, but like, maybe that position, and don't press at all, just only touch, right? And then I will look in there, and yeah, of course, you see, any human hand will do it without pressure. So, and this sometimes is too much conditioning for your brain. So you go into violin and things are already like, oh, we cannot move because we're playing like that. So it's changing the shape of your approach to the string, for instance, like a guitar, basically, may very well unlock the actual movement in your hand that lives there. It lives for every person, whether they play violin or not. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, then you increase that pressure to 1/4 of what you normally do. And so you will have a little fuzzy sound. It's that kind of sound when I'm pressing 1/4. It's not a good sound, but for vibrato purposes. And again, you just feel that fuzz in here and the joints will move. Then you go to half of the pressure and you don't go anymore. You just play it half pressure and you will have vibrato. You will have vibrato with looser joints. Okay, Gabriel, I am sorry if I skipped your question and a few other Marco's questions. Let me go back to Marco's question about. Oh yes, I think I skipped a lot of questions, didn't I? Sorry about that. Okay, Gabriel, in what ways does the height of the elbow affect one's playing when playing in the lower half of the bow? I'm thinking about the equity menuhin. In the lower part of the bow. Well, okay, so there's this thing about height of the elbow. There are prescriptions, some teachers are much more about the elbow level. Some teachers are a bit more lax. in that. And honestly, there's so many players, so many fantastic players who had higher elbows and lower elbows, and both elbows can actually work. They just should not go over like critical um, position. Okay, so in other words, if you're in the lower part of the bow, in any part of the bow, and your elbow is too high, and it's really too high, you will be touching the next lower string all the time. So it's most likely will go, it will just be touching this kind of string. I don't play with a very highly elbow. It's not my tendency. My tendency is to have a lower elbow. I'm a lower elbow person, and I do believe that lower or high elbow is set like when we start. In the very first approach to violin, some people will tend to be with a higher elbow and some people with a lower elbow. I would say most probably will be on the lower side because the gravity pulls down and it's easier, but some would just be here. And a lot of times it goes with a hand position like this too. So you kind of need to watch out. Maybe your hand position this way. And if that will be driving your elbow up. So in order to get away from the higher elbow, then it's not just, you cannot do this because it will be very uncomfortable. What you can do is to lower yourself from the wrist first. Okay. Okay. So I hope I am answering your question, Gabriel, but that's pretty much what it will be. In what ways does the height of the elbow affect otherwise? Again, just watching what it is. If you're teaching somebody, you watch if they're clumsier. Sometimes maybe sometimes it's just a higher elbow also will produce a bit more tension that we don't need, and we usually then say, okay, let the weight of your arm pull you down, things like that. But yeah, sometimes it's kind of, they're related, but they're not necessarily cause and effect. I knew a lot of people who play with high elbow who are not tense at all. They just have that kind of attitude towards the bow. Okay, Sanada Panata. Explain the mystery between shifting and hearing the interval to the shift to beforehand. Hear the interval of the shift, probably, right? Okay, between shifting and hearing the interval. Okay, so if I understand you correctly, so the mystery between shifting and hearing the interval. So let's say I need to shift so I need to go from B to F sharp. So if my understanding is correct, first of all, I need to hear the note in my mind. So if I see that that's F sharp, I need to go to, and let's say I will have to go to second finger on that F sharp on A string, right? So what the first thing to do is to be able to sing it like da da, and then if playing it, don't play with shift, just play right there. It won't be an interval of the shift; it will be actual shift. Okay, so in this case, because you will be using first to the second finger. I'll explain the second why one is not the same as the other. If we use the same finger, then yes, then the shift and the interval of the shift will be identical. So if I go to 1-1 here, right? So it will be fifth. That either way, it's interval of fifth and the fifth of the shift will be of the fifth interval. But if I go to the second one, so here, right? So I go for the note as I heard it, but my actual shift here, basically I will go to the about the E for the first finger, as we all know, but the second finger will drop down onto the F sharp. So do I hear the interval of the shift, which will be a fourth in this case? So the shift itself will be fourth because the hand moves a fourth, and then the second finger falls. No, I won't be. I'll just go by. I go by interval of that I need to get. Okay. However, if I'm really out of tune, then yes, then I will strip the interval to the interval of the shift, and I do 1-1 to the fourth position. And that's where my F sharp will be. And that's this kind of shifting, like when we shift from lower position, lower finger, higher position, higher finger. But in scales, as we know, it's a reverse. It's shifting with the lower position, higher finger count to upper position, lower finger count, like, like that. So in this case, again, the interval of the shift is a third, because I'm going from first position to third position. So it's a third. But the notes are, so what do I hear? Again, I hear the note to which I go. I'm not hearing this, because I will never play that E. Plus, in reality, we don't even go to E exactly. We go to probably E flat in the actual motion. And that's when we're there, the fingers change. So I'm not sure exactly if I understood your question, but I hope I answered enough. Okay. Larry, in spiccato, do you adjust bouncing point of the bow when you move from one string to another? Not in spiccato. Spiccato for me, it's more controlled bowing. It's either completely controlled or partially controlled. So I don't think so. Let's see. Do I? You tell me. I don't think I'm using different parts of the bow. I'm saying the same place. Violinist forever. Greetings. How to use the left hand thumb in the upper positions, when to leave the neck and touch the rib, you mean, right? Starting from what position you leave the neck. Is it for average length hand? Okay, so that's a question about what we do here. When in higher positions, when we leave the neck here and when we go to the rib of the violin here, first of all, those of us who have to leave the neck and go to the rib, yeah, we will do it after you exhaust your stretch here. So after that stretch is completely exhausted and no pain, of course, is there, that's when you go to the rib. So for me, it will be when I'm on the upper C here. So if I'm not having to go any further, I can actually still stay here a little bit by the neck. I have first of all, I have long fingers, as you know, as you can see, I have long fingers. But my fourth is short in comparison to 1 and 2, very short. So I do have to accommodate it. And if I go any further than this, like for instance, this is C, if I have to go to D and then 5 notes up, if I am an A major, let's say, you see, I'm already here in the rib. There's no way I can be here because it starts hurting me in this area. And for many people, that's the case. And if you have smaller hand, you will have to do it sooner because you just don't have enough of reachability in the upper positions. So, but not too soon. That will be important. So first we want to open this space, open this web space, it's called actually, and the reach, and as much, but it should not be hurting anywhere here or there or there, different for different people. So if it starts hurting, that's when you go to the rib. Now, also for some hands, for very small hands, you don't even need to go to the rib, There is a way to go up like this and go all the way on the rib. I mean, on the fingerboard, sorry, not on the rib of the violin, but on the fingerboard. So for me, it's not good, you see, because you see, I haven't opened all of that. So for me, it's excessive. So we do want to open more. Why do we want to do it? Because it makes return much simpler, much faster. Like when you come back, it's easier to just close that web space and be done, rather than being here and then having to get to the neck and up and down from there, you see. So when you look at the very lucky people with very big hands, most of them are men. When you watch those videos and you can see like their hands are sort of like they're made out of, I don't know, stretch, some kind of a stretching material, like yeah. So there they can stay all the way there, and then they go here and they're completely in a straight line, so you can see these thumbs, that go like here. I was always envious about this, but my hand doesn't work that way. And it's really how the hand is constructed. It has nothing to do with how you train it. It's either will go or will not from early age. And so those who can stretch into the straight line, then yeah, it's fantastic, because the more you stay at the neck, the better, the easier it is to return. um, Okay, starting from which position I leave the neck in here, for instance, if I'm touching there, I start coming off in the fourth position personally. So third, in the fourth position, I have a breathing space, but fifth is when I have the space here. Sixth, it increases. Seventh, it starts opening, but not really, not much for me yet. Sixth, seventh, that's seventh. And after seventh, I never count positions. So after that, it's just by notes. All right, Danny. Hello. You've been practicing my college position and other events, but sometimes my wrist starts to hurt or have tension. What you can do? You know what? Honestly, I need to see you. And luckily, we are going to see each other tomorrow. So your right wrist and arm. So if your right wrist and arm starts having problems, it means that you are grabbing things. Your fingers are grabbing the stick too much, or just grabbing the stick. Fingers should not be grabbing sticks. So whenever they grab the stick, that's when it goes up. The travel always comes from fingers up. So many teachers, many people think, unfortunately, erroneously, that it's the other way around. The tension starts here and goes into your hand. No, physiologically, it's wrong. It's actually from the fingers that have to do the job, because what holds the bow? Not the arm, not the elbow, right? Not your shoulder. It's the fingers. So if the fingers get tense, the tension travels up your body. So we'll have to look at it. In portato bowing, should the bow speed remain constant through the slur and each note only distinguished by bow weight, or should the bow slow down between the notes? In portato bowing, so portato bowing, or otherwise can be called roulé, I think the answer really is the tempo and what kind of a um, expression exactly you're getting by that bowing. Okay, so if you're moving with the speed that is going to be, you don't slow down the speed in a little kind of half breaks between the notes, right? If you don't slow down, you will have more definite tom pom 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 sort of sound. And if you do da, 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 almost just being very expressive, then you will slow down the speed in when you're slightly lighter. Mhm. So Zoe, I guess Zoe don't ask, is not asking me a question. Okay, so Frenchman. Oh, I did ask as well. Kirill, what is the role of the thumb in vibrato? Is it simply relaxed, or do pulses in the opposite direction of the hand to the hand? That is such a deep question. I have to first do it in order to answer it, because I don't know how to answer it right away. So, but I'll find out in a second. By my sensation, it's kind of relaxed. Um, Pulses? I can't tell you. I don't feel any pulse opposite to the hand. But maybe what is happening, because I've been doing it my whole life, and you're doing it relatively recently. So maybe it's like what you feel, like the thumb is a little bit like this, yeah. It's just kind of does that to the neck. If you feel that, that's perfectly fine. I mean, it just should not be more than very light touch. That's all. Yeah, it's simply relaxed. It's not exactly totally relaxed either. It's basically relaxed. It's functionally relaxed, but it's not. Well, relaxed thumb would be something that I would. Well, I guess I just relaxed. Sorry about that. Andreas, I wanted to ask you for advice on how to reduce wrist movement in bow changes. Reduce wrist movement in bow changes. Okay, so here I have a question. What kind of reduce the wrist movement you're talking about? Is your wrist doing that? Is that the question? Because I am not exactly sure. So, or is it more of that kind of thing when you are in the middle of the bow? So, in other words, I need clarification. Which part of the bow you're talking about, and to which degree is your current movement? Reducing the movement in bow changes. If that's what you're doing, you say, well, we need to be careful and that we mean the same thing. So what I'm doing, and when I do right now, I showed a lot of wrist movement. We don't need that much, but it is still based completely on the reciprocal movement of the arm, forearm, and the wrist. So the wrist is in a reciprocal movement situation. So the forearm moves and wrist basically follows. And that's what I call it paintbrush motion, right? So this is a physiologically human motion of the forearm and wrist. When we don't initiate anything with the wrist like this, we have no initiative whatsoever. We just drag the forearm, yes, and the wrist follows. So in that case, it becomes the reciprocal movement. That's what I was showing. However, if you're doing something extra, which I don't know because I can see you, like this, then that's a totally different ball game, and the answer will be completely different. Okay, so you please clarify for me what you want, what you mean. Okay, I believe that I answered this question. Professor Julie, would you kindly scroll back to Santa Banana? I already did. I already did. Kirill, how do you connect notes in the continuous vibrato, super legato? Notes in the continuous vibrato. You mean like vibrating and then not stopping vibrato when you change fingers? Is that what you mean? If that's the question, that's the answer. So you learn. I would recommend to learn. Oops, sorry. Um, I would go from the higher finger to next finger. You can start with the fourth. If your fourth is not very good, start with the third. Um, and you do the vibrato. And then what the first exercise that you will do, you will lower the finger below it, right? You do this, you lower it, and then you raise it. You don't even touch the string necessarily if it's hard. So you just go from higher, where it rests, into a little bit lower to the string, and then raise, stop. You go again, raise, lower, raise, stop. Okay, so after a while, when you approach the string with that finger, go very slowly. So basically not to disturb. You can actually look. You need to look. I'm looking over here, but you will look at your finger here, and you raise, and you can just see visually that nothing stops. And you lower the finger on the string, and then you slowly raise it while that thing is still moving. So that's the preliminary exercise for anything, um, or any continuous movement. It's not that simple, but it becomes very easy once you get the hang of it, that you don't stop that movement when you are lowering the finger down and raising it up. Okay, so then you repeat it the next finger, and then eventually you do also fourth to the third, and so that becomes this. You can just continue vibrato and the changing there, and the same thing. Then you can do up only after you mastered of down. Doing up is harder, much harder first. Okay, Larry, earlier question. Did I not answer your question? Did you ask me anything, Larry? I'll go forward so far. Tips for keeping the pinky on the bow when on the tip of the bow. My pinky often lifts off the bow and um, on the down bow strokes. You know what? I lift my pinky on purpose at the tip of the bow. I was taught to do it, so I would say how to keep it there. Well, I mean, just keep it there. Then I suppose sometimes I do, but I was actually taught not to keep it, so that's good. Maybe that you don't keep. Live on. Thank you. Okay, let me see what you asked me here. Let me see. But you retracted your message. Well, thank you very much anyway, being here. Christopher, I wanted to ask a question not pertaining to technique, if I'm allowed. I want to continue my studies and do my master's degree in viola performance. Are there any professors on the program you recommend? Viola performance? Yes, I recommend UNT. I recommend my colleague Susan Dubois is a wonderful teacher. Also, Daphne Gerling, we have another good, very good viola teacher here at UNT. So I would definitely recommend our viola department is strong. I am not as familiar with other viola departments, but I would say University of Georgia, where Dr. Ambartsumian, who was just here, also, and his wife is teaching, I believe, viola, and perhaps maybe they have another teacher also. They're very strong as well. And let me see. Yeah, well, anyway, start with these two. And then you can always write to me with any questions. Anybody can write to me. I have the email that is now attached to my channel. It's violinclassusa@gmail.com. So any questions, you really have specific questions, I will try to answer them, of course. See, okay. Shirley, right hand and left fingers coordination problem. Ooh, yes. That is a big thing for all of us. Now, let me see. Thank you, Josue. Shirley, left fingers are relaxing, but bow movement is also lightening. How to separate the left and right hand? Yeah, okay, that is a very basic, very important basic function of the two kingdoms. I call them the left and the right. So yes, this has to be lighter. Meanwhile, imagine like this, that you constantly work at the opposing, like that. So this goes up, this goes down. So there, in other words, of course, initially arms was to go together. And you tell them, no, now you will be working like a seesaw, you know. So one kid goes up, the other kid goes down, the other, and they always switch. And that's what happens here. So left hand lighter, right hand here. So if you start again losing that map, then and then using it onto the in the bow. So play an open string with good sound, and then lighten. Well, that will be kind of an ugly note to have it, but go to harmonic note, like again D or G, you know, here, and just go to harmonic. So you just on the same pitch, on the same place, right? And keep this and just feel how, oh, that becomes lighter, that stays into the string heavier. I would help. Next, and from that, of course, you will go with just anything that you do, just that feeling of seesaw. Nestor, how to do a clean ricochet with scales? How did you clean ricochet with scale? You mean on scales, like that sort of thing? I'm not exactly clear on the. If you could clarify a bit, I try to answer. Andrea says I'm doing a lot of wrist movement in the upper half of the bow. Okay, so the yes, upper half. No, you should not do much of wrist movement at all. So is that the reciprocal wrist movement? Well, restricting I think is easier than making it more. So you just move less. You know, if you want to do that much, just say, no, I have that much range. That's all you're allowed to do. You can talk to your wrist like this and just say, oh. It's almost have to feel, not that you will do it, but it will feel in your fingers rather than in the wrist. Okay, but again, not what you do. The feeling will be the sensation. Very small. Look at your wrist. Lots of times it helps just looking physically at your wrist and monitoring how much it moves. But honestly, this is a very rare problem to have. You know, it's a kind of good problem to have. I would say most people are stuck and they're not using any wrist. Nestor Diaz again. Another question, I guess, how to connect scales of chords. I don't think I understand exactly the question. How to gonna scales, of course. Okay, I'll let you clarify it. Okay. In the four octave scale, is it good to leave the neck to the rib with the thumb, particularly in the upper position, ahead of moving the hand itself to this position? Is it good to leave the neck to the rib with the thumb ahead? No, no, I would say no. So that's what you mean, right? No, I wouldn't do it. I would do them basically. I would probably, out of the two, I would think that, yeah, this part has to go first. And then that part, first of all, because you're stretching it. And then when you need to move, you will move after, or basically we'll move together, honestly. But you had to think or feel that it's after, not before. On the way, on a way back, what I would recommend to do these days, I do. I mean, I was taught differently, but it never worked for me how I was taught actually. So let's say I am on the rib right now, and when I go back, because I go to the rib in order to reach with my very short fourth finger, okay? So if I had a longer fourth, probably would be a different story, but that's my case. So I'm here in order to reach with the fourth. After I'm done with my fourth, I don't need this already. I could be more here, and I prepare this as I'm playing with the several fingers on the way down. In other words, you see, so I would be playing like second finger and first, and meanwhile, my thumb will open and go to the neck. And then I will reduce the movement in here. And then again, yeah, so it's a more preparation on the way down by way of stretching down on the notes that you can afford to do it on. Mark Upton, I'm self-taught with the help of people like me. When I try to play, our dog comes and howls. Yep. Yeah, the dogs sometimes they're really irritated by the sound of violin. We had dogs when I grew up in Moscow, and oh my God, they sang. We called it that howling, was we called it singing. But yeah, they were howling, and you will already stop playing, and they will be so parakeet. Very easy. You take the parakeet to another room and put something on the cage, like a shawl or something, blanket, so they are not getting too excited. Then the dogs, I guess, they should just kept out of the room. Um, Ekaterina Grigorieva. Also, is there a correct way to do vibrato? I noticed most musicians do it differently. You know, correct way is the way that sounds good and doesn't hurt and doesn't get tense. Yeah, that would be the good way. Yeah, the people do it differently. Most people would use either wrist vibrato or combination of wrist and arm. When you hear things like finger vibrato, believe me, finger vibrato is a complete fallacy. There's no such thing as finger vibrato. Sometimes people use this word as finger vibrato when they mean a very small wrist movement that they themselves feel is a finger vibrato. But as I talked to several specialists in the area, physiological area of physiology of hand, right? You probably seen my videos, my conversations, interviews with a doctor, somebody who really knows how things are. So we had many discussions with her, many conversations aside of those that we taped, and discussed different possibilities. And yeah, no, there's no such thing as finger vibrato really, but some people think this way, that that's what they do. However, the more of the forearm and or more of the wrist, those are real things. That's what exactly works. And whatever is your um, thing to do, yes, absolutely. Just go by the rules. Rules are no tension, no pain, no fatigue to the point that you have to stop because if something is hurting or uncomfortable, and vibrato sounds good. So then, yeah. Um, Ricochet like that are the exercise to technique and sound cleaner. Yes, this is what I would recommend you to find. IMSLP will give you the Charles de Berriot, the same Berriot is wrote mini concerti for violin, and go to that school of violin playing, and he will have the Ricochet etudes. Are great. You start with 2 notes on one string, 3 notes, then you change strings. So there are many of them, and that will help. Michelle, hello. How can I work on keeping a solid left hand finger position in the higher positions of 3 octave scales? I try not to press into the fingerboard to avoid tension, but my fingers, I guess the fingers press, tend to shift slightly. So on the descending side, I see. So, okay. You know what? So when you are, for instance, let's see, whatever you are will be, like you are in a D scale, right? Here I'm in D scale. So if you're, here I am, and what you're saying is, and then they moved up, right? Like this. Okay. So I would not recommend to press harder, no. So, but what you should do, if they move like this, you need to just find out when they move, like when the first finger moves, which finger are you playing? Just be more observant, basically. Now, like right now, I know when it moved, but I allowed it because I'm demonstrating. So I'm going back and I hear, oh, that's a whole half step now. I should be on G and I was on G sharp. So then I will go. And when I am here and I will like, oh, okay, so right now it wants to move, I will just tell it, stay. So in a way, you're doing the opposing movement just slightly. You're compensating for the finger stretching, for instance, right? And then you figured it out. Yeah. So a lot of times you at first have to feel like, oh, I'm doing a little opposing movement for the undesirable movement not to take place. You see what I mean? So another thing is to do, if you know that they slid, you felt it, then when you go back, you just correct them as you go back. Okay, so you sometimes decide that, oh, I will keep them in the right places by using this slightly opposing movement for at first. Later on, you will get used to it. There will be no opposing movement. It's just you will preclude the sliding. Okay, but you can also go by, allow them to slide and then correct them when you go back, like this. And now I'm correcting because I know the second finger was sharper. And first I'm correcting now. So instead of, I will put it back into G. That's all. I hope it helps. Robert, is the weight of the violin held by the jaw and neck or by the left hand or both? By everything. So don't just keep it here only. It has to be on the collarbone, left hand, in left hand. So in jaw, collarbone, and left hand, a little bit of each. Yeah, it's much better than completely doing it here. I was told that way. It's not a good way to go, really. Yeah, it has to be a little bit more distributed, evenly distributed. Okay. I'll focus on a minute movement to note when my fingers move. Exactly, Michelle, that's what you want to do. I think I skipped, oh my goodness, I skipped a question after Ekaterina. Okay, I will go to this question. That's true. I think I have picked a lot of questions somehow. Let me see. Oh, yes, sorry about that. Or also Ekaterina's question was, what are some tips to release tension in the left hand? Okay, so I will also then, and that I will be answering yours. Tips to release hand, honestly, the same that's what I was saying before today. So when playing with 3/4 of the tension in the fingers, of the pressure when you're on the string, instead of using regular pressure, using 3/4 or half even. Sometimes it's good to go to half. Secondly, you need to know if you are, when you're normally playing, like what you feel, and then just letting go of something, as I call it, just let go of something and just feel how it is. Sometimes it goes to the point that you will lift all the fingers, again, not lift the fingers, but you will release the pressure and you will just stay on the string in the correct place, but not completely lift, right? So here they're at pressure and I'm pressing a lot right now. Now I release, and as you can see the difference between this and here, right? Pressing, not pressing. So then when I feel like, okay, so that's how it can feel actually, how it will work then. I'm not pressing the string at all right now. And that was the best thing to do at first, just really feel the difference. Then when you play, press less. That is the most important thing. Unless, of course, you have other tension issues, which we can't address right now because there'd be so many. But yeah, that would be probably the most basic stuff. All right. So could I explain what's the rule of thumb when playing chamber music when my group, three intermediate orchestral violins, not have much experience? Typically, I rely on bass note from cello. Yes, I would think that that's correct in general. Bass note from cello would be good. That is provided that your cellist can play somewhat in tune. Now here I will say something that is not just a second. Let me have a sip of water. Okay. Playing chamber music too early is not very good for the level of um, not for the level. It's not very good for developing of the ear and just playing more in tune. It's too early. Is too early. But again, okay, I guess there's a big difference between how the chamber music was approached when it was in my country, or my previous country, which was Soviet Union, which is no more, and how it is in the West, where I am right now, and I'm in the West. So I would still stand by this and not push beginners to play chamber music, because I still want them to hear some kind of quality of intonation, quality of sound. And if they are not yet comfortable just playing their own line, their own tune, so to speak, it's going to be much worse when you put three people together. Um, so there is, of course, the upside to it is that they are learning to play an ensemble, and maybe the goal is to play an orchestra right away, and they are already in the orchestra, right? And so then, of course, you're building sort of the section skills and participation with each other kind of skills. But then intonation goes. Intonation will be terrible. Absolutely. No matter what you do, intonation, if they're beginner or intermediate players, if their own intonation is not yet established fully, you have to expect three times worse. If there are three players, it'll be three times worse intonation. Four players, four times worse intonation, because neither one of them is yet still set in knowing where the notes are in the fingerboard. But if you're put in this situation, you have to do it, and they have to do it, and everything. So then, of course, yes, the baseline would be, I would say, yes, by the cello, of course. You build from the chords from the cello, the lowest note. Absolutely. Um, so I hope I have not skipped any more questions. Yes, weight of the violin, I answered. Mark Wilhelm. What are some tips to release tension in the left hand? I think I just answered it to somebody else. Choking the violin by its neck. Yeah, like this. Yeah, well, it's there are exercises, again, a little bit, well, exercises. Oops, sorry, I have this little desk here that is I keep writing into. They're playing things like, I will show on a shredik number one. Okay, shredik number one, for those who don't know, goes. Okay, so but I'm taking it ultra slow and showing what you can do with the thumb versus, because part of the choking is that this is happening. Okay, and in order to release it and to feel it released, you play one note and you take your thumb off to the side. Okay, like this. So then you can also slide it back, forward and back. Now I'm doing basically like 1, 2, forward and back. You can also do the 3 movement, 1, 2, forward, back all the way, and then to the regular place. So it will be taram 1, 2, 3, taram 1, 2, 3, taram, and so forth. So the rhythm changes a bit. So, but yeah, that will ensure that you're not grabbing with a thumb, and therefore will not be able to squeeze. So now, interesting thing that I learned relatively recently about that famous squeeze that is so prevalent in violin players is that, and again, if you haven't watched my videos with the interviews with Andras Terzik, the hand specialist, physiological specialist, and she works helping musicians, right? I highly recommend to watch them because there are many, many good things in there that can open your eyes on how things work. So so that is one muscle actually here. I always thought that there are two muscles, like one and then the other. No, it's just one with two heads. Like one goes here, one goes there. No wonder if it's something squeezes, it just wants to squeeze the life out of it. And if you have something in between, it will be like this. Yeah, it will just squeeze and hold. So we don't want that. Yeah. Okay, so what is the secret rule of coordinating breathing with playing? How to systemize breathing with every playing? There is actually, yeah, secret is a very simple secret. Secret is because nobody talks about this pretty much. Well, by now people do talk more about this. My teachers never talked about breathing, which was pretty bad. I wish they did talk about this. So I used to play for years, sometimes not breathing, I think for minutes at the time. um, So, rule number one, when you first start, especially if you have an important start, a right hand or whatever, make sure you start on exhale, not like not like that. Actually, even though sometimes musically it feels like we should inhale and then start. No, you always start exhale, then you start your note. So it's and then the sound is easier to produce. Why? Because on exhale, our muscles naturally relax just a little bit, and that already helps. Okay, so next thing, when you're playing, there isn't such a thing as breathing in a special way. You just need to breathe, just need to follow the breath that it's going in and out once in a while and doesn't get stopped. So that's the most important thing. Okay. So I think how to systemize breathing with every playing. I mean, I think, well, I actually wouldn't do it otherwise, because if you start controlling, that becomes very artificial, I would say. You just need to keep breathing. So pay attention when you breathe up and when you breathe out. And again, at some points, honestly, if it's really hard, people do hold their breath. And I think sometimes it's okay, but very small times, not very often. It should not be the rule. Alston, do you recommend doing R vibrato on a D and G strings? As hard vibrato with my vibrato, more effort, slower. Honestly, again, I do not switch between arm and wrist. My wrist includes the arm, obviously. And sometimes, yes, sometimes I would use probably more arm to my wrist. So you can see that this part also is moving, of course, on the G string. But a lot of times I wouldn't, you know. It just depends on what will work for you, I think, in this case. As I said before, the main thing is not to get tense, not to get tension. And thicker and string my brother takes more effort than slow. But actually, that's the word effort that I don't like. That you need to find to do it without effort. Yeah, not physical effort anyway. Okay, I know what happens now. It just kind of skips when I scroll it down. So, what brand of strings I recommend? Brand of strings are really different from instrument to instrument. For most violins that I have dealt with, mine or my students, most people, not all, but many people, I would say, are happy um, okay, I am having a blank moment right now. Vision. So vision strings. They're more, of course, they're professional grade violin strings. So if you're not a professional, then I would go with just cheaper strings. I mean, Tomastic dominant, I used to play on dominant for years professionally, and I was fine with that. And then later they developed more and more and more, like vision is part of that development. Now I use vision. But again, it doesn't fit absolutely every violin. I had a different violin before, and there I used Eva Pirazzi. Again, Eva Pirazzi right now is so difficult. I think it's very expensive by now. So again, you kind of watch what is affordable and what will still give you a good sound. And it's a trial and error on the violin that you have. So I'm familiar with this. I'm familiar with, as I said, Damascus Dominant, Pirazzi, Eva Pirazzi. So it's not Pirastro. Okay, it's Eva Pirazzi. Pirastro Olive are the gut bass strings, and they're good for some instruments. Again, they're also will be expensive, and they have a different type of sound. On some instruments in the past, I used olives, but now I wouldn't. Not on this violin, I wouldn't. Um, People use pi. Pi is very expensive and it's kind of very upper end. But again, it fits some instruments, and for some instruments, it really doesn't make any difference. You play on the regular Vision or solo Vision or Vision Titanium, which right now I'm using a Vision Titanium, and or you put the pi on. There's really no difference. Sometimes the difference is by your ear, and you think, "Oh my God, everybody hears it." No, in the whole, it's really not. Okay, I will go to next question. What exercise I recommend for position change? For position changes, among the printed materials that we already have, I have my material is coming up soon that will be published. But out of the existing things, I would probably use the Yoast system. Again, for the very beginners, there's a wonderful small book by name. His first name is Yakov. Forgot the last name right now. I have the book in the other room. I guess I will probably can put it in the chat after the session is over, and I will look it up. So that is an excellent book for very much beginners stuff of vibrato. If Kirill is still there, maybe Kirill can write it down because Kirill knows the name of the author. So other than that, Yoast has a good thing, but you have to watch carefully that you don't do all of the exercises in the progression that they are. Just go first the one finger shifting, then lower finger to higher finger shifting on the way up, higher finger to lower finger and shift down. Just do those. Don't do the mix. Don't go from the lower finger to the higher while crisscross sort of going from lower position to higher, like scale. Don't do those shifts first, then later add those shifts a bit later. So, and then of course you're ready to go to Shevchik, the Shevchik book of position changes, shifting. Before the coffee gets cold, how can I add double stop into simple pop song to make the pop song sounds more sophisticated? I think you better do it on piano first. Michelle, in your opinion, what makes a solid intermediate and advanced player? What skill set do you expect, or what do you look for at each level? What distinguishes a beginner from solid intermediate? I think beginner from solid intermediate. Solid intermediates should be, will play with the basic skill set is the beginning skill set, right? It's good sound, stable intonation in one position. So I would say beginners do not do shifting at all yet. That would be in my definition for beginners, that would be a beginner. No shifts. Maybe the beginning of shifts only, like very, very beginning. Then once a person starts shifting and shifts better and better, and once they have solid shifting between first, third, and maybe fifth position into the fifth position, then I would say that would be intermediate. They also speed increases, being ability to play faster increases. So that would be what I would consider to be an intermediate. Basically, intermediate is somebody who can already play like acolyte concerto, Hollander acolyte. Oh, thank you, Kirill, so much. Okay, so look there in the chat, please. Kirill writes, name of the book, Geringas Yakov, Shifting, 30 Studies for Young Violinists, Violin Solo of Red and Harry. Thank you so much. Yes, that's the question for uh, the shifting part. Okay, so distinguishing beginner from solid intermediate. Yeah, so solid intermediate would be able to play some 3-octave scales and play them in tune and in moderate tempo already, like in 16 notes tempo. That would be solid intermediate. Alan Lee is asking, do you think it's a good idea for violin students to learn viola during college? I think it's a good idea. Yeah, I really do. Maybe not right away. And I mean, I think right now you would be what freshman, sophomore, right, Alan? But if I'm thinking of the right Alan, but I would say upper years, junior, senior. Nina is asking, as adult learner using a cheap student violin, and at what point should I consider upgrading a nicer violin? Well, I hope that you do have access to a teacher in person teacher. You should. I mean, at some point, anybody has to, no matter how well the progression goes, but you have to consult with somebody who can hear you from outside, so to speak, right? So I would consult with that person and see if they think that you have exhausted the possibilities of the violin. So there is no set time, like, oh, until when you play etudes of this and this and this, then you have to go to more expensive violin or better violin. No, there's no such thing. So you have to exhaust the possibilities of the instrument. It sounds really, you outgrow the instrument. That's when you change to a new one. Sorry, I can't give you anything more precise here. Violinist is asking, violinist forever, during practicing scale, is it useful or not to keep the fingers on the strings as much as possible as I can to strengthening the frames? If it's useful, do you advise to keep the fingers in fast tempos? Keeping these fingers down or not is sort of, we have to be able to do it, and we don't need to do it at the same time. That would be the answer. So it's kind of contradictory answer, isn't it? So, for instance, if I'm playing, I know that I'm not returning to the same notes right now. So my first finger will lift up usually somewhere during the second, like in the second half of the second finger note, or maybe on the third finger note. Yeah, it's already off. Yeah, but basically, if I'm not returning to the same notes right away, they will gradually lift. Some not right at the moment when you switch fingers, not like on the piano, but a little bit later, like in a halfway later, they will lift. They will not lift far. They will lift just, or maybe just go on the surface of the string. That's, by the way, the most important thing, that whatever you do not press with the fingers that are any fingers that is not the finger that is producing the tone, the note. So F sharp is playing, my first finger is either on the surface of the string or it's slightly above. The third finger is playing, the second finger is on the surface of I'm not going to raise it because it's long, but it's on the surface of the string, it's not pressing. And if I go on, basically they lift, yes. Strengthening the frames, I don't think it shouldn't be done by strength. It should just be done by what I said before, by little opposing movements, if necessary. Sometimes it's not necessary. If you keep going up, you don't need the frame staying exactly like it was before. When you return to the same fingers, that's when the frame is important. In fast, keep the fingers in fast tempos. Again, you just look if it helps you. If it helps you, keep. If it doesn't help, you don't. Jonathan, recommend violin store in the US. Never played, but would like to something with good sound, resale value. Not interested in any beginner's instrument. So, good dealerships, if you're looking for expensive, what we call antique violins, right? So, good dealerships are Kenneth Warren and Son in Chicago, um, Robertson's, the Robertson's in Albuquerque, Mexico. There is of course, very expensive store in Chicago is buying Fushi, but they're so expensive. They're just like, I honestly can't recommend them. It's just not necessary to get all this upper. It's not like they have better instruments. They don't, but they will have the same instrument, the same value, and they will just ask for a lot more money. So, but Kenneth Warren and Son doesn't do it. And as a matter of fact, there are many places that are really good. Maybe I should just kind of look at the, like, not on the spot, and I can write them down in chat after the session is over. How about I do that? Okay, so I think actually came to the end of questions, and you're so welcome. Yes, you're all very welcome. I was very happy to give. Oh, Vinicius, yes, hello, greetings from Brazil. Thank you so much. Yes, I will be wrapping up because I think the session went well. Thank you for your questions, and we will do more of this in some relatively near future. I'm starting my school year tomorrow, the semester, so it'll be a bit more busy, but yeah, we'll see. Okay, one more question. All right, okay, Michelle. How do you advise your students on a bad practice day? For example, a practice session, but everything is off, intonation shifting, etc. You know, how would I advise? They have to concentrate more. It means that just choose one thing, and get the result. Yeah, because when this kind of bad day happens, it means that they're completely brain scattered. They're just kind of playing, and then like everything is over because they're not concentrating on something definite. So I would tell them, just choose one thing and make this very very well fast. Okay, like fast improvement. That's what you're looking for. Try to make it from one try. Usually doesn't work, but at least you can tell them, like, okay, 2 tries, maximum 3. The 3 is you go, oh, you fail. That's it. Whatever they're doing, like a shift, a little phrase, a tiny portion of an etude, say, don't play the whole etude, play one line, but do extremely well. And everything, them. These things are things that you have to do in order to be extremely well. Intonation, bow, da. That's it. And put small goals that they can achieve super fast, not in fast tempo, but with the correct work of the brain work. Okay, so I hope that helps. Guillermo, hello and bye bye. I'm glad it was helpful. Okay, so I will see you all later. Bye bye.